diplomatic government activities done to maximize the profits, ostensibly for our U.S. national champions in the tech space. And the idea is the government does favors for these big technology companies, and these big technology companies now have more profits that spill back to the U.S. It creates more U.S. jobs. It creates more, profitable imports and exports for the U.S. economy. And so that's I sat at the desk that big tech companies would call when they had problems with foreign governments. There were a few other elements to the role, but in particular, I've talked about this publicly, but I remember when I got a call from 9 Google lobbyists on a single joint phone call about how the U.S. government has to step in and protect Google from the EU Digital Services Act because it was the #1 existential threat to Google's business model over the next 5 years. That same threat is hanging over the head of Facebook. As I mentioned, just in May of this year, the EU took enforcement action against Facebook. It could cost them billions of dollars in fines. Facebook can't stop that government from doing that. Only the U.S. government can talk to that U.S. government and talk them off the ledge or threaten carrots and sticks, threaten trade agreements, threaten security agreements, threaten sanctions, threaten retaliation. That's the job of the State Department. And the Biden State Department, I think, as I said, use that role at the State Department to pile on rather than protect our U.S. national champions.
In that journey through working in law and then working for the Trump administration, working for the State Department, when did the topic of censorship and freedom of speech, do you remember when it first hit your radar? And then when did you just develop this obviously very deep level of understanding and passion for it?
Yeah, I remember it very vividly. It was August 2016. You had begun to see, really for the first time on the internet, isolated incidences of censorship happening in the run-up to the 2016 election with Donald Trump. You also began to see strange thought leadership around the need to censor the internet, which was a foreign concept to, I grew up in an internet family, so to speak. It was always sort of my family had started an internet business when I was, in my teens. It was a part of the lifeblood of my personal life, my family life, and also my professional life, as a lawyer to that point. But when it really sort of changed my life and hijacked it was when I saw basically these white papers and then this sort of open source, these APIs you could play with from Google Jigsaw's Perspective API. And there was something that was in the works in late 2016, which I considered to be the most existential threat to humanity. It was the threat of AI censorship and the ability to, I was a big chess player as a kid. I sort of had this flashback to how chess engines worked, without getting, I guess, into the whole rabbit hole of it. Basically, it was very evident to me that these new artificial intelligence tools for ranking and throttling speech on the internet was going to change free speech forever, because when people saw these isolated incidences of censorship in 2016, there was a lot of overconfidence by people that they would always be able to outsmart the censors by, making little changes, as I mentioned, to what you say. Mm-hmm. Or if they censor something, we'll say it in a slightly different way. We'll misspell it. We'll always be able to outsmart them. And I remember very vividly as a kid when chess computers came out that allowed you at a retail level to just plug, your home computer could beat your chess tutor. And I remember when Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov, and just the existential dread over the whole chess community, like the realization that actually you will not always be able to outsmart the machine. The AI will actually pre-censor you. It will be able to beat you on your best day, no matter what. And it's a totalizing, suffocating experience that there's no way out from the maze of it. And when I began tracing what was behind these AI censorship capacities, and I saw that it was actually coming not just from political forces, but from these very heavy hitters like the Pentagon, the State Department, the CIA, the NSA, the USAID, the National Science Foundation. This was coming from government agencies that were subsidizing the technological development of, what I began to call weapons of mass deletion, these sort of weapons of mass destruction for controlling speech. And so I tried to tell everyone about it in 2016, and no one believed me. So I began my sort of hard-headed, obstinate process of proving it by chronicling it and showing it and showing it. And then that eventually turned into a kind of book project and a documentary project. And then it sort of hijacked my career and took me into what I'm doing now.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me talk about Firecracker Farm and their hot salt. You probably heard other people talk about it as well.